Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Grillin' JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. Jim, how are you, man?
I'm good, Conrad. It's been a busy time, and things are good. A lot of wrestling going on, so makes me happy. So I'm good. Hope you are too. You are too.
I'm great, man. I do want to have a follow-up, though, of course, on last week's show. We briefly touched on WrestleMania, and you said you didn't watch a minute of it, but I've talked to you since, and you had a chance to catch a few minutes, so better late than never. What'd you think of WrestleMania, dude?
I thought it was a hell of a production, quite frankly, considering the inclement weather that you can't beat Mother Nature. She doesn't do any jobs.
Right.
And she proved that once again, especially Saturday of WrestleMania. So I thought with a bad hand dealt to WWE, they came through it with as good as they possibly could, considering the conditions. I didn't watch all of WrestleMania both nights. I will fully admit that, but I did watch it both nights sporadically. I had some company here, and I had people in and out from time to time, so I kind of split my attention to two different areas. And but I thought it was good. I thought the booking of Bianca Belair and what's her name?
Sasha Banks.
Yeah, Sasha. I love her work. Apparently I don't, because I had a brain fart. I thought they did a phenomenal job. Had a great match. I wasn't real sure that Bianca Belair was going to be WrestleMania in-ring ready, to be fully transparent. But they did a phenomenal job. Had a really emotional match. I thought it was really good. And Bianca Belair is probably within the top. She's probably one of the top 2 or 3, 4, whatever, just raw athletes on the roster, male or female. She was a track star, Division I, Tennessee and other places. So she's a great athlete, and I thought they did fine. I liked. I'm glad they had some pretty decent finishes. I thought. I liked McIntyre and Bobby Lashley. McIntyre just really, really good.
Yeah.
Not to say that Bobby Lashley isn't, quite frankly, but McIntyre really was the straw that stirred the drink in that match. So I enjoyed that. I thought that the triple threat match on Sunday night was exceptional.
Yeah.
Enjoyed that a lot. But overall, I admired the hard work that everybody put in, the crew working in the rain and getting all these things done, and the wind was an enemy. So I thought they did a good job for WrestleMania, and I'm glad that it went off as well as it did. They did 25. They had to seat it for 25,000.
Yeah, I think it was 25 or 26,000, somewhere in there.
Yeah, and they looked like they'd sold those tickets.
Yeah,
pretty much. So that was good. The thing about it is that, and a lot of my critics, I don't understand that we're able to talk about other wrestling business other than just me talking about AEW. But the deal is this: the better WrestleMania does, recapturing the imagination of the wrestling fan, it trickles down to everybody else.
It does.
So if people are against us at AEW or they're against WWE for whatever their reasons may be, that's their call. But really, in the big picture, the better events like that do, the more everybody can attach themselves to that momentum. So I thought they did a nice job, and so congratulations to them and for putting on two nights back to back. That's just not easy to book.
No.
Because you got all these politics. Who's going to go first? Who's going to last? Who do you follow? Who do I follow? All this stuff. And you got to keep the matches unique and different. So that takes some compromise and some debate somewhat. So, but I thought they did a nice job. And I thought that some of the audience was a little hard on Michael Cole for having a couple of mistakes. This damn job, Conrad, is not easy.
Right.
If you think about it in logic and think about logically, to do a 2 or 3 hour show without a script, with you're not reading lines, you're creating lines, you're creating the content. You're bound to make a mistake here, there, and yon. And because of social media, a lot of the fans are just have no patience. He made a mistake. Yeah. And what is your point?
Right.
Are you pointing out he's human? I make plenty of them. And then, of course, when you make a mistake, everybody calls for your head. Oh, they got to get rid of JR. They got to get rid of this guy, get rid of that guy. Okay. Easy, Einstein. You got to be shitting me. What are you basing this on? How old are you? 12? What do you got? 19 Twitter followers? And you're going to be an expert and tell me how to do my job? You can make suggestions, but you can only go so far with that logic, I think, Conrad. So it's a tough time to be on television with the digital imprint that's there, because everybody knows more than they've ever known. The curtain's been pulled back vividly. So now everybody's a quasi booker, and it's just sometimes it's not fair, quite frankly. But then Cole, I saw where Cole is. They got a new Monday Night Raw guy.
Oh yeah, what do you think of him?
Nice guy. I've met him a time or two. I know he follows me on Twitter, and I follow him too on Twitter. He's a nice kid, and he's a good fan, and I think that will help him eventually. But he's finding out, I'm sure, like he probably would tell you today, that this job ain't easy. There's big shoes to fill, and it's a key role. I just don't look at Raw as a flagship show anymore. It used to be, but it's not any longer. I think they've hung their hats firmly with Fox, and Fox will maybe have a little bit more to say on who the announcing is going to be done by. But Adnan did a nice job. He's just in a tough spot, man. The wrestling fans are not going to give him any breaks, none, and that's unfortunate. Give him time. Just give him time to let him settle in his role and do his storytelling. So it's just a matter of you got to have the chemistry with your partners. Your partners have got to have talent. They got to understand how to take care of you. Especially he's so green, and no matter if he's a big fan or not, Connie, he's got to adjust.
Right.
And it's harder to go out and do that job than it is. So, well, I'm a big fan, so I've always been a fan. Well, okay. There's millions of people out there that have the same qualifications, except he was at ESPN and MLB, and he's got broadcast experience, which I'm sure helped him get his gig. So, they're making some changes, and I think we're making some changes also. We're adding more content here sooner than later with another show, but and we're getting our schedule together. Looks like we're going back on the road pretty aggressively beginning in July. So and getting back in front of a live audience is a blessing. I can't wait. It'll help everybody's work. you can't help but feed off the adrenaline of the people, the audience that's surrounding you. So it should be cool, but it was good. And what else did I have on my mind on that deal?
Oh, we should probably acknowledge, your great close personal friend was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. We didn't mention it last week. I just got the vibe you wanted to sort of move on, but Dr. Death now in the Hall of Fame, a legacy inductee.
Yeah.
Didn't get the full Monty induction, so to speak, but it's always nice to be acknowledged. And I'm sure his family was happy to see that.
I think they were. And, Doc will always have a place in my heart. He's like a little brother from day one. Because Watts kind of gave me the responsibility of, I don't want to say take care of him, but help him acclimate and not shoot himself in the foot because he's out there on the road and trying to fit in with the boys. And, but I was really happy to hear that announcement. And, I didn't see it. I didn't know it was happening. I wish I'd known. I'll go back and catch some footage of it. Cause I think they used one of my calls in his match, his induction. I was also very pleased and humbled that Glenn Jacobs actually wove me into his Hall of Fame speech.
Yeah, that was very nice.
Yeah. And he apologized for burning me up. Medium rare. So I love Glenn. There's no better, we've never hired a better citizen than Glenn Jacobs. He's the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. He's running for re-election. If I lived there, I'd be the first person at the polls, because I believe in him that strongly as a human being, as a good person. And he did great with his gimmick. Once we found the right gimmick, it wasn't automatic. It wasn't from day one, but he endured. He stayed his course and kept his attitude good. Great team player. And I think that also was just a reflection of his own personal integrity, character, so forth. And he was very influenced by Undertaker. That was Undertaker made Kane.
Right.
And so then when you're around a guy that much, either in tags, the Brothers of Destruction, or whatever it may be, and then opponents, you can't help but be influenced in a positive way by the dead man. So it's good. We talked about that with Mick Foley. So it's funny how certain wrestlers take other wrestlers under their wing that they like, they see potential in, and they go the distance with them. And certainly Undertaker did that with Mick Foley, which I'm sure when we do our next Mick Foley show, we can talk more about that. But the stuff with Kane was just terrific, and I think the world of him. And of course, Doc is like a family member. So it's all those things like that help make WrestleMania better for me, because it showed more of a human side from the company, and that they are allowed. Some of those guys are allowed to express themselves in their short but impactful acceptance speeches. So it was all good, all good. I admire the fans that watched all of it, all of WrestleMania both nights, and then watched 3 hours of Raw. Good gosh almighty. That's a challenge now. I don't care who it was, what company it is. It's just a challenge. So anyway, all good stuff. And we're coming on to a really important time for us in AEW. As I said, we're going back on the road, which I can't wait. Even though I like doing our shows, we're going to still do a lot of shows here in Jacksonville at Daly's Place. But getting back out on the road and hitting some real nice venues that have already had. They've had, some of these people have held tickets for these postponed events, Conrad, for over a year. So consequently, I expect an amazing, ambiance and atmosphere, and that's going to help everybody involved, including your old fat friend here. I love that. I love that stuff. I love the crowd, and we feed off them, and it's really cool. So I'm sure AEW will be releasing their schedule. I actually have seen it. It's very aggressive, but it's very exciting. So hopefully it'll be out. It'll be something really for everybody to look forward to. So much like the show with John Cena today.
And I'm fired up about this one. That is our topic today. John Cena's 2006. Next week, we're going to be back talking about Backlash 2001. And don't forget, if you haven't already, you can go join us over at adfreeshows.com and get all these shows early and ad-free, including the brand new Roundtable from Jacksonville with Tony Schiavone, Jim Ross, and Eric Bischoff. It's a barrel of laughs. But let's jump into our topic. John Cena, 2006. He was the face that runs the place for a decade. And as we're recording, or as this airs rather, tomorrow, April 23rd, is his birthday, and he's only 44 years old. That is not an old person in the wrestling business, but my gosh, how much did he accomplish before that age?
Yeah, he was always a keeper. I saw him the first time in UPW, company run by Rick Bassman out there in Southern California. He had kind of a Sting look, the flat top, bleached blonde, all jacked up guy. But I might have mentioned this before in our shows. What really sold me on John was not, I knew when I watched him work then that he needed a lot of work. He needed more reps, if you will. But when I talked with him, I found a historian and a real deep-rooted wrestling fan. So he was aware of a lot of talents and what made them great and things of that nature. So I thought, well, we got a guy here. And I remember I told you the story about taking a red eye home and going straight to the office. I was so excited about getting him committed that I went to the office and caught Vince at about 10 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And I was after sleeping on the plane, probably looked a little disheveled. And I said, I've just signed a talent that I believe will headline WrestleMania within 5 years. And he said, you need to go home and take a shower. Okay. Aren't you excited? A little bit, but I was effusive. I thought, good character guy, great body, athlete. You got to love those offensive linemen. He was a hell of a center. He was a small college All-American. And just a great team captain. All those things count for me. JR's a mark for football. JR's a mark for this. You want a guy that fits well into the locker room. You want a guy that's been recognized by his teammates and his peers as a leader, and John was. So I didn't know he'd go as far as he did, Conrad. I ain't going to be I got a crystal ball here, but I thought he was special. And as it worked out, luckily for everybody, he was special.
Let's jump into it. The 2006 run is what we're discussing today. And the first Monday Night Raw of the year sees John Cena main eventing with Kurt Angle in a non-title first blood match that sees Angle wind up victorious. It turns into a schmoz with Carlito, Daivari, Chris Masters, Kane, and finally Shawn Michaels all running out. And the show goes off the air with Cena hitting the FU on Shawn Michaels. Let's talk about that for a minute. The use of blood on Monday Night Raw. I don't know that we would see that very often these days, but in the old school, that was an almost go-to whenever you knew, hey, we need a hot angle. What if we could turn the volume up and involve the use of quote unquote color? When do you remember that first falling out of fashion with WWE?
Not long after this. The intent was to get away from the gratuitous violence and the blue humor, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And be a little bit more family friendly. So the ruthless aggression in this era, what it was called, was simply a search for something to replace the Attitude Era.
Right.
That's all that was. And so consequently, I think after that, the use of blood was very selected. It wasn't overused. So and Vince always had a soft spot for some guys who needed or wanted to do color for their angles. The thing about blood is that if you don't overuse it, it's not like the 80s or the 70s. If you don't overuse it, Conrad, then it's a great dramatic effect. it will, oh, look at that. Oh, look, he's hurt. It's like I would suggest to you that in that match we had on AEW several weeks ago now with Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa, that the use of blood in that women's match was a shock and got people talking, and mostly in a good way, but it exhibited and demonstrated the violence and the aggression that the women had. And so, but if we did that every week, it would mean nothing. So luckily, I think that we're in a situation where we're not going to overuse it. But I know WWE is in that mindset too about this time. So it was anything that we could do to keep the show edgy, but not attitude era-ish. So, but somewhere right around this time, and there was still blood, don't get me wrong, but it was very selective. It was very, very, it had to be a right place, right time for it to work. And because they wanted to get everything was all about the sponsors, and you can't blame them for that. We love our sponsors here. We take care of them. But if we were doing something that was so heinous that it was offending our sponsors, I would, if you asked me for my vote, I said, well, let's change a little bit. Let's tweak what we're doing, because let's take care of our sponsors, because they keep us on the air, quite frankly. So in any event, it was about this time we started pulling back on the use of blood, but we didn't eliminate it totally.
Let's talk about New Year's Revolution. It's the first Raw pay-per-view. We would see Cena defend the WWE title against Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, Carlito, Chris Masters, and Kane. You're not a part of the commentary team. This is Joey Styles, Jonathan Coachman, and Jerry Lawler on the show. You had been taken off the air the prior year due to your colon issue. And it was reported that even though you weren't on the air, you're still working backstage helping produce. Were you at this show? How was this commentary team to produce?
Where was this show at?
Well, let's look.
I can't remember. I remember them better. I'm sure it was.
It was in Albany, New York.
Yeah, that'd been a car trip from where I lived to stay in Norwalk. Yeah, well, it was just a way of staying connected, staying on the team, staying involved, participating, contributing. And I certainly had a different style of producing talent than they were perhaps accustomed to with Vince doing it. So, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed helping the guys, and I didn't scream at them. I didn't yell at them. I didn't interrupt them in mid-sentence in a live show. But we prepared well together, and I'd feed little things here or there and yawn. But it was fun. I enjoyed doing that. It kept me back in the game, because it's at home, man, already battling facial paralysis, not knowing if I'm going to come back or I can come back or they want me back. It just gave me another skill, another tool in the toolbox, Conrad, that I could utilize to maintain my employment, shall we say.
Let's talk about that show. Cena, this is a big show. Cena retains, and then Edge cashes in, the very first Money in the Bank contract cash in. And this comes on the heels of John Cena spending 28 minutes in the Elimination Chamber. Edge comes out, spears Cena. Looks like he gets the pin, but Cena kicks out. And then Edge hits a second spear and gets the pin and wins his first WWE title. This is a major moment. I remember that moment like it was yesterday. It really is the first Money in the Bank contract cash in, and I thought it was so well done. In hindsight, is this an all-time highlight for Edge and the Money in the Bank concept? What do you think of this?
Well, I think the fact that it's the first time we really used the Money in the Bank concept stipulation was historic in that respect, based on where and how the Money in the Bank stipulation has evolved over the years.
Yeah.
But for Adam Copeland, aka Edge, winning his first title was huge. I'm sure if you ask him, he'd probably say that was one of the highlights of my career, because to think that he came from being an indie wrestler in Ontario, making little or no money, and he and Jay Resso, aka Christian, signing with us, for a developmental contract, training in the warehouse with the Tom Pritchard.
You ever hear some of my commercials and think to yourself, that sounds too good to be true. That's probably malarkey. Here's the deal, man. It's real. Just ask Jason up in North Branch, Minnesota. He left us a 5-star review for our work over at SaveWithConrad.com. He had this to say: "My fellow wrestling fans and podcast listeners, Conrad's message is real. This process is very easy. Believe me, I've refinanced twice in the last 12 months. If the need ever arises again, without hesitation, I would make the call. Thank you, Conrad, and especially thank you, Derek. When you guys are in Minnesota, give me a shout. I'd love to buy you each a drink." We helped Jason save some cash and get an even better deal than he got somewhere else before, and you can do it too right now. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket, but it's worth another look. I'm telling you, what have you got to lose? Wouldn't you just like to have that peace of mind of knowing you've got the best deal for your family? Well, that's what my family can do for you right now at SaveWithConrad.com.
Who always did a great job, still does, and Dory Funk Jr. We had good coaches, and they did a great job in getting these guys ready. They had already had several years experience in the Indies. Let's be honest about that. But sometimes the guys that come out of the Indies have done one thing for sure: they developed significant bad habits, and generally it's getting in too big a hurry, not having continuity in your match, not knowing the difference in registering and selling and things of that nature. But these two cats were very, very much students of the game. So I would say the journey that Edge was on, and then finally winning the title, was significant. It was certainly significant for me because I was very proud of him. You know, I've always got along with Adam and Jay. There never was problems. You know, there never were issues. And then, of course, I made friends with Edge's mom because we were both major Eagles fans, not the Philadelphia Eagles, but the band, the Eagles. And so that was kind of our link. And so when we were chatting about Adam, or I'd see her at a show or whatever, that was something we'd always chat about. And Adam's mentioned that to me before. You know, my mom loved talking to you about the Eagles, or, you know, how many times you've seen them, your favorite song, all these things. So I felt really happy that he won the title. And I would say that was a significant moment, quite frankly. Maybe you can't win another one. You got to win one before you can win more.
Right.
And he did that on that night there in Albany. I remember him, now that you mentioned the town, which I should have known. I remember parking. I remember driving up from Connecticut. And it was just a real cool moment. Now that you talk about that, it was a feel-good moment. I'd love to have called the match and been the voice behind Edge's first title, much like I would like to have been the voice behind Mick Foley's first title. It just wasn't the hand I was dealt. And I went through a lot of depression and self-medication because I just thought my career was over. So if my career was over, unfortunately, I looked at everything was career-oriented. If my career was over, then life, as I knew it, would never be the same. And maybe that's being over dramatic, probably is, but that's how I felt. I was that committed to the product and to the business. So, but anyway, I remember that trip. Nice, easy 3-hour drive, hitting Albany and doing the show and being able to get back home.
The next night on Raw, John Cena cuts a promo talking about losing the title and tells those who boo him they can, quote, kiss his ass. And this is the first time I think I remember John ever talking like this about his mixed reactions from fans. What was your take on all the Cena sucks chants, and what was Vince's thinking at the time? I mean, here's your most over babyface based on the way the story is written, but it does feel like the audience is becoming more and more divided. Maybe guys my age are booing him, but the kids and the ladies, they're huge John Cena fans. How did you reconcile that?
Well, I think that it was a trend. I think some fans thought it was the fashionable thing to do. It created some audience participation, I assume, where one side of the aisle was saying, you know, Cena sucks, and the other side saying, let's go Cena. So it gave the audience something to invest in that regard, emotionally invest in. But for those that didn't like John, I never understood why they didn't like John. It could be, well, he was overexposed, whatever. I don't know. Maybe there's somebody else. It was their choice on the roster that they, would rather have had in that top spot. It was always kind of confounding to me that people would have that mindset. So bottom line, I didn't like it. I thought it was disruptive. But again, the fans, they buy their tickets, they pay their money, they drive from home, they take a seat, here they are. They got to be able to have freedom of expression and enjoy themselves. And if that's a part of them enjoying the experience, then so be it.
Let's talk about how Vince viewed this. Did Vince, as far as you recall, back when these chants first started, was it ever even discussed? Hey, maybe we've done too much with him as a babyface. Maybe we need to turn him heel. I know later, as time goes on, he felt like, well, we probably can't do that with all the Make-A-Wish stuff and all that stuff. But here, all these years ago, 15 years ago, do you think it was ever even seriously discussed, Cena as a heel?
I never was involved in a serious discussion with Vince about it. We sometimes chuckle about it because there was like a remnant holdover of the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
And, you're not going to separate yourself from the most successful period of time in WWE history, as far as I'm concerned, that facilitated going public and things of that nature. But I don't think we ever had any serious discussion about it. We might chuckle about it, something like that, or the audience is, Vince and I would talk about the audience and how the audience is changing. And it was changing before our very eyes until what we see today. So, and people are very outspoken. And the only thing that's been tempered is for them today is the fact that, until WrestleMania, they hadn't been in front of an audience in a year. And that affects atmosphere, that affects performance. It just does. You can be a great performer, but you're going to be a greater performer if people are chanting or cheering or booing, they're participating, and you can see them. They're sitting there, not like those, not through technology. So, but I don't think we ever really talked about it. It was never a big issue, quite frankly. What you said about John's probably granted more Make-A-Wish appearances and things than anybody ever in Make-A-Wish.
Yeah.
And, that's hard. People have to understand how hard that is, because we all know that Make-A-Wish is for something that is done for these terminally ill children. And, meaning, they know the hand they're dealt. They know they're not around for much longer. And so to be able to experience that, and Cena just didn't do drive-bys. He would go meet with them. He'd sit and talk with them. And I know that would be something he had to process and still go back out and work, because it wasn't easy to go through that dialogue or those conversations with those children. They were happy. They got to see John Cena. They were loving life for whatever life they had left. They were loving that, and John helped facilitate that. But you can't let the details get in the way of a good story or a good boo. So that's kind of how I looked at that situation. But Cena was special even then on his Make-A-Wish. He believed in it. He believed in it. And a lot of the guys that we would go to do Make-A-Wishes didn't have John's commitment. Some of them would tell me, it's just too hard for me.
Yeah.
I have children. I think of what it would be like if they were my kids. The Cena didn't have any kids, Conrad. So he had a little buffer there, but it affected him. And I've seen it affect him. So I've always admired John for many things, but his commitment to the Make-A-Wish kids and these terminally ill children was really, really special.
Let's talk about what's happening with the other segment on the show. I can't believe this happened. This is the night after New Year's Revolution. There was a live sex show with Edge and Lita which ended with Cena hitting Lita with the FU. Boy, if you could have some do-overs in WWE, the live sex show probably makes the list somewhere, wouldn't you think?
I think so. It just wasn't. It wasn't appropriately named. It denoted a little darkness. It certainly wasn't family friendly, but it had a different name. You could have done basically the same thing, but the live sex show indicates that somebody's going to have sex on the air. I mean, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
You're not going to the drive-in together and sit there and hold hands and eat popcorn.
No.
So I think that the connotation of what live sex show meant wasn't real positive, but it was another remnant of the Attitude Era. It was seemingly, to me, it was more appropriate for the Attitude Era, if it was appropriate at all, than it was for the Ruthless Aggression point in time. But it was a good TV. If you liked it, it was good TV. If you didn't like it, then it was a good TV. It's simply that simple.
Lita has spoken out about how she felt pressured at the time to do things she didn't feel comfortable with. You were running talent relations. Did she ever bring any concerns in this era to you that you recall?
Maybe a casual conversation, but nothing to the level of, I don't want to do this. If she had come to me and said, I don't want to do this, I refuse to do this, I'm not comfortable doing it, then she wouldn't have had to do it. Would have done something else.
Right.
But I think that the precedent of going against the company's booking ideas had a lot of talents uneasy. They didn't want to screw up their push because, God damn it, Conrad, we all know if you don't have a push, you got nothing.
Right.
When's your push come along?
I'm hoping to get one sometime soon.
I'll help you if I can.
Pray for me, brother.
I will. You got Brother Love on your side.
I do, when he's available to talk on the phone.
Poor old Brucey. He's knee deep in it, man. And I'm sure, quite frankly, he wouldn't have it any other way.
Oh no, I'm sure he's having a good time. It's the time of his life, but I can't imagine the stress. I know you didn't plop down and watch WrestleMania right away, but with that rain delay, and then I don't know if you saw, but there was a giant bubble forming over the ring where all the rain had collected on the plastic, and you had to feel like just any minute now this thing could blow. And
yeah,
they're just in the back, just hoping it goes well. That's got to be nerve-wracking.
Got to be, and I'm sure it was. But in any event, it was Lita was a trooper, and she saw that this was a part of her break. This was a part of her build, a part of her getting recognition. Because the issue is, you just want eyeballs to come to her scene or her segment, whatever you want to say. And then that's how I explained to her. It may not be the way you would ideally want eyeballs on your segment, but considering that's what they have planned, the office has planned, I would just say, go steal the scene. Go give people something to talk about. And then as the more they're familiar with you and this image that's being perpetrated for you, the more opportunity you're going to have to get over. And quite frankly, that's how it worked out.
Yeah.
Lita got over.
Yes, sir.
Big star and Hall of Famer and all that good stuff. Gosh, she was real worried when I had my first meeting with her about her tattoo, because I'd been warned. Well, she's got, this is how funny the times have changed. This is how times have changed. Well, now she's got a tattoo.
Right.
Now, can you imagine today?
No.
If tattoos are taboo?
Yeah. I mean, it'd be 8 guys in wrestling.
Yeah. It may be, right?
Yeah.
So, and how about the women? There's a lot of women got plenty of tats. It's
Sure.
it's just the way it is, man. That's a fashion statement. It's so, but she was worried about that. And I remember her taking her little office. She had a little nice suit on, skirt and a jacket. And she took off her jacket to show me her tattoo. I was nonplussed. It was, hey, it's cool. I don't know what it was. Lots of ink on her arm, but she was worried about that hurting her, and it didn't. I told him, I said, you know, she's got a tattoo. She's a little edgy, and I don't think edgy was bad.
Right.
I said, but she's really, really good, Vince, and I'm going to hire her. And if the creative has the same feeling about her after meeting her that I do, you got a winner on your hands. And luckily enough, creative group agreed with my assessment, and off she went.
Let's talk a little bit about the next week. Edge defends his title against Ric Flair in a famous TLC match, which would see Edge win, and Cena would save Flair from getting the old concerto. And it was pretty amazing to see Flair in a TLC match. We recently talked about him in a Money in the Bank ladder match, and now a TLC match. I think maybe the next year he did like a hardcore match with Thumbtacks with Big Show. Flair was like willing to try anything in this era, was he not?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was a departure from what he had done, even though Rick was involved in a lot of bloodbaths and things like that during his NWA title reign. And it did that very well. But I was never overwhelmed in a positive way that Ric Flair belonged in a TLC match.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that he couldn't make it work whatsoever. He could do anything. He could make anything work in the squared circle. It's just, I believe maybe more than anything that perhaps it just wasn't necessary. You know, I just didn't see it. I didn't feel it. But they pulled it off pretty well. It was all right because the TLC thing was kind of had been polished, and you know I don't think that was Rick's forte, climbing things and falling off of them. I'd rather seen Edge and Flair have a classic wrestling match, and then have Cena and Edge and Flair. I'll get it right. I'd rather see that match, and then at the end, after Edge went over, then do your angle with the concerto. I just didn't think they needed the preamble of a TLC to get there. You can still do the same angle, and I think having Edge beat Ric Flair was pretty damn cool for Edge's career.
Oh yeah.
So I just didn't think he needed the TLC, but you know, again, they pulled it back. They pulled it off, and it worked. It ended up working okay, much to my surprise.
Let's also talk about the Royal Rumble. That's the next major pay-per-view, and we would see John Cena defeat Edge to win the title back in 14 minutes and 3 seconds. This is interesting, I guess, because you know you've got a 2 pay-per-view month. So the whole chamber match and New Year's Revolution, and just a couple of weeks later, it's time for the Royal Rumble. We know that the Rumble marks the beginning of WrestleMania season, but my goodness, Edge did a lot very quickly. That's such a memorable cash in. Then the whole silly live sex show, then the Flair TLC. Was the company not sold on Edge being the top guy quite yet? Or was this more a matter of, hey, it just makes a good story for Cena and sort of gets over our new concept for the cash in?
Well, you got an interesting situation here. One is you're still building and trying to get Cena over, and you're building and trying to get Edge over, and then they're working with each other. So a lot of thought's got to be given into the creative of that and how finishes are structured. But I think maybe your first suggestion, maybe the office didn't quite have all the confidence that they wanted in a quasi green talent that Edge was, because he was known as a tag team guy.
Right.
And so his whole voyage as a single star, which, you know, obviously one of the highlights of WrestleMania for this year for me was that triple threat match, as I mentioned earlier, Edge and Reigns and Daniel Bryan. They were masterful. and it shows how far Edge has come. So, but I do think at that point in time, Conrad, my guess would be that he was not quite in a comfort level yet that would make Vince happy. Not unhappy, just I got to see more. He needs more time. He needs more experience. He needs more ring time at this level against this kind of quality competition. That would be my guess on that deal, because Adam had never had any issues with him. You know, he was a perfect a locker room guy, and everybody had time to talk to him, and he was just a good dude. So I think maybe it was just the fact that he just quite hadn't proved himself to VKM at that point in time. And I might be wrong, but I think that would have more to do with it than about anything.
Well, now we know that Cena's the guy here again. He beats Edge again, we said, in 14 minutes and 3 seconds. Triple H, is he always the WrestleMania opponent in mind? Or was there a thought that, hey man, we got Edge hot enough, maybe they could have a rematch, if you will, at WrestleMania?
Triple H is always in the picture because he was arguably the best heel that we had, and certainly was that way for many, many years, to his credit. I just don't know. I always found it somewhat confounding. Triple H is a heel,
right,
and a damn good one. You know, Harley Race's influence on Triple H was very prominent and very obvious. Excuse me. But you know, I don't know, man. I think maybe I didn't know who the heel and babyface were. And it was a heel match. Was Edge versus Triple H a heel match?
So let me ask Jim, you know, when we take a look at John Cena and what he's going to do at WrestleMania, we know the prior year he was working with Layfield and they were next to last, but the last match that night was Batista and Triple H, and they had that long story with Evolution. Totally get that. When you're looking for an opponent for the next WrestleMania for John Cena, is Triple H the only obvious choice?
I don't know if he's the only obvious choice, but he is an obvious choice. Simply because Triple H had the ability in the ring to make other guys around him better. And he was a great strategist. They put matches together very well. So he might not have been the obvious choice, Conrad, and he might be. I don't know. I'm just saying that he certainly was the most viable choice, because he was coming into his own about that time and really refining his heel skills and adding a little wrinkle here and there in his look and his tights and his sledgehammer and all these things. And the thing about Triple H was he was reliable.
Right.
You know, he was always there. You know, the only time he wasn't there, he was injured. And those injuries were not minor injuries, because he had a lot of those that he worked through. It was the fact that, you know, he had some surgery related injuries that he had to take care of. But other than that, man, he was reliable as hell, and would make sure that the opponent, if Triple H is going over, he knew the formula: make your opponent really look like a star.
Right.
Because then when you beat that opponent, you've beaten somebody significant, and the win is a more high quality win. He got that formula. And it's still that way today, quite frankly. So it wasn't going to be an enhancement match where he's going to eat somebody up. So I think he was the obvious choice. He might not have been the only choice. Probably wasn't the only choice, but he certainly was the obvious choice in my view.
Let's talk about another pairing. It seems like it comes out of left field. John Cena and Maria are linked up as a couple in the follow-up here, and they're even making out before they team up to beat Edge and Lita. I understand, since we just did the live sex show and they're such a strong duo, of Edge and Lita need to be in the mix, so let's put Cena against them. How does the Maria thing come to be, though?
Well, look at her.
Well,
you think she's not TV worthy?
Oh, no argument for me.
That's it. She had great sex appeal. She was a fresh face, and was always professional, wide-eyed and open to try things. So yeah, I actually thought that was a good choice because she was a new player in the equation, and she had all the tools that she'd want. If John Cena was going to have a girlfriend, she's got to be hot.
Okay.
And nobody can deny the fact that Maria wasn't hot.
No,
She
sir.
was. She is, especially even today, as a mama too. She's just she's such a joy to be around. One of my favorite people, and I hope that she continues to do well, stays busy. But she's really enjoys being a mom, Conrad, and that's a great trait, great quality to have, quite frankly. So I think that was the deal. If you're going to get John Cena's going to be his first TV girlfriend, let's give him a dandy. And I thought that was a good booking.
Next up, we would see Cena defeat Edge again on Raw, this time with Mick Foley as a referee. And that really starts the Foley Edge program for WrestleMania, which we know is going to be a good one. And then Triple H would win a Road to WrestleMania match over Rob Van Dam and Big Show. So now we've got our stage set for WrestleMania. It's John Cena versus Triple H. And we see Triple H start cutting promos on Cena, talking about how he's a transitional champion and he's not a very good wrestler. And I think some people believe that when these promos started, they hung around Cena for a long time. I mean, I understand at the time, Triple H is trying to be as real and edgy and shoot brother as we can. And that will certainly work for a WrestleMania rivalry. But I am curious what you think about those comments and how they really follow John for the rest of his career.
Yeah, not the right direction to head in for for Triple H. He would, in today's world, he knows better,
Right.
And it's not the way you build your opponent. It's easy to say, I don't know if you're the greatest wrestler ever seen, but you're not as good as me.
Right.
Things like that would be better. So you start off with the wrong philosophy, quite frankly. So, and it got off to here's a good word for you. I made this up. Wonky. It was a wonky start to the deal. Can you imagine some people are tweeting about me saying wonky?
I want to mention over at boxofgimmicks.com right now, we have a new shirt that's available. Has, of course, the signature JR Cowboy hat, but it calls you the Wonky Talk Man. So, there you go.
There you are. So I will buy one, folks. Boxofgimmicks.com. Dave Silva sent me some nice swag. I mentioned that. And I was very impressed with all the stuff that he sent me. Good quality stuff. And
good.
So if you get a chance, and there's a lot of, I went on the site, man, there's a great selection of inventory.
Yeah, we got a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, it's cool stuff. So, but anyway, it's just not the way you cut a promo. The intensity was there, the wording was fine, but the philosophy of that promo was not good. So, but that's, it's hindsight. Like I said, Triple H has matured.
Yeah.
He's become a better student of the game. Not that he wasn't then, but he's much better now. And you probably could get him to say that. If one of his kids on NXT or somebody in the main roster was using that philosophy, it probably would not make air today. It's just they're not the right way to do it. And, for whatever reason, Triple H was given that liberty to kind of go into business for himself.
Let's talk about what's next for Cena here. We do see a Saturday night's main event return where John Cena has to team with his WrestleMania opponent, Triple H, to take on three other opponents who are going to get it on in a three-way dance at WrestleMania. It's Kurt Angle, Randy Orton, and Rey Mysterio. This is the return of Saturday night's main event. It's been off the air for quite a while. When it's all done here, Cena pins Orton to gain the victory. And of course, that continues to build tension between the two. We would see John Cena main event a Raw against Vince McMahon, as Shawn Michaels and Cena are battling the McMahon family. At that point, it's Vince, Shane, and Triple H. in this era, did it start to become too much of a good thing? Like it felt like the McMahons had been on TV as big characters for a long time. Was this too much? Was it time for something new, or fans getting tired of it? Do you think?
Uh, pardon me. Well, the answer is, how are the ratings?
Right.
I remember they're pretty good for that McMahon thing, right? Or am I wrong?
Yeah, it drew a 4.99 rating, which is about 6 million viewers. Meltzer would write, the main event was Cena over Vince by DQ in 3 minutes and 24 seconds. Triple H and Shawn were handcuffed to the ropes. The match was all tests of strength. They even did spots where McMahon would out-muscle Cena. Vince took the worst bump ever. I think the idea was Cena out-muscled him and threw him down, but it sure didn't come out like that. As Cena was getting a test of strength advantage, Vince kicked him low for the DQ, and then he used the handcuff key to release Triple H. He got a sledgehammer from under the ring and laid out Cena, who juiced. They also surrounded Michaels, and Triple H hit him with a sledgehammer, and Vince hit him with a chair. The last scene was Triple H and Vince, ending with heat as the faces were all bloody. I thought it was effective. Cena versus Vince itself was a new level of bad for a main event.
Well, okay. Is that a revelation? Is that a startling statement, for God's sakes? It was a new level of bad. What the fuck did you think it was going to be? Vince is not a worker. He wasn't. He's a guy. He's a mature man that's was living out a dream of a younger man. So it can't be great. Now, if you got Shawn or Shane rather, or whatever, and certainly Triple H more involved, and you saw what the results were when they were involved, it got over. But that's some of those things like said. Well, it's a new level of bad. No shit, Dave. Come on.
Well, I mean, here's a revolutionary idea, Jim. For the main event of Raw, why don't we just use a couple of fucking wrestlers? Got a bunch of them under contract, paying them a lot of money. We could just go let the boss put on headsets and be the boss.
Because he didn't want to, Conrad.
So there's that.
How come you're on every show that you broadcast? Because
you that soon,
right?
Yeah,
but because you can if you choose to, and you feel a need to. And I'm glad that you are, because I don't want to work with anybody else. I don't. I'm just being honest. I will, because it's I made a commitment to you, and I would.
Sure.
But the bottom line is, Vince felt at that time that he needed to be involved, because we had not done a phenomenal job of building box office like heels. And Vince was still operating on the fumes of he and Austin's and Rock to another degree rivalry. And I said it many times, and I mean this. He was the best heel we had in the Attitude Era.
Right.
Was it because his work in the ring and the new level of bad? Hell no. It's promo ability. What he represented. Take this job and shove it type thing.
Right.
That's the only Johnny Paycheck reference I'll make probably today, but nonetheless, most people say, who the hell is Johnny Paycheck?
Oh, I know who Johnny Paycheck is.
Of course. So, no, I just think that the match wasn't booked to be a classic wrestling match.
Well, what's interesting is this WrestleMania could have been a lot of other things. We're on our way there, but I think it's been mentioned that once upon a time, the original plan for Shawn was going to be Eddie Guerrero. But of course, we know he tragically passed away a few months prior to this. Mm-hmm. So that's no longer an option. And somewhere around here near Royal Rumble time, Batista gets hurt. So now your former main event from the prior year's WrestleMania is down. And I can't help but wonder, if Batista's here and healthy, and if Eddie hadn't passed away, I don't think Vince is working Shawn at WrestleMania. I just don't think there's even a remote chance. But it does feel like, oh man, we don't really have anybody ready. Let's hit the panic button. I'll go back in there and I'll do something.
Maybe. I've seen it. It's not a new concept.
Right.
Cowboy Bill Watts did it when he wanted to pop business with he and Stagger Lee, a.k.a. Junkyard Dog, against the Midnight Express. It did box office sellouts in every city we're in, because it needed a cash flow injection, and it worked. You know, that could have worked very well in WCW during the Dusty booking era if Dusty had pulled himself away from television for a while, not believing that he was an essential part of the process. He was essential, but he didn't need to be out front, so that when he made his returns, or he would come in to be somebody's partner, or he would come in to interfere or be the voice of righteousness, it would have worked bigger. And because he was a star. And then certainly with with Vince, again, the heel attitude era run is not something you just throw away. So I don't want him sitting back in the back on a headset. And selfishly for me, I didn't want to hear him.
Right.
So I'm being very, very honest here. I worked better when I wasn't getting heavily handed produced word after word, you know.
Yeah.
But by the time you say what he wanted you to say, the moment had passed.
Yes.
And he and I had many discussions on that. The moment had passed. Now I told him, I'll try to bring that back around, but let me do it when it's time makes sense, because It's a disconnect. You're seeing one thing and I'm addressing another. Where's the continuity in that deal? So, but anyway, here's what's ironic about this. Remember that we were talking just a minute ago about Triple H's promo that Cena couldn't wrestle?
Yeah.
Who won the match? Cena.
Yeah, Cena won.
You follow my drift here?
Yeah.
So a guy that can't wrestle beat your ass.
That's right.
You can't say that on television, but don't think the fans weren't thinking it to some degree. So it was just a bad concept, or a bad philosophy, better said. So anyway, and those guys they always have pretty good chemistry. They did pretty good, I thought.
Now let's talk about WrestleMania weekend here. Vince is going to have John Cena induct Refrigerator Perry into the WWE Hall of Fame the night before WrestleMania, and the fans are all over him, booing like crazy at the Hall of Fame. Not Fridge, Cena. But when it comes time for the final match at WrestleMania, John Cena gets his hand raised over Triple H after 22 minutes and 4 seconds. The rumor and innuendo at the time is that Cena was moved to Raw from SmackDown to get the title to Triple H. So some people were sort of shocked that Cena won. But in this era, it felt like WrestleMania always tried to send the fans home happy.
Right. And when they don't, then the fans have a minor outrage because, of that deal. Well, you didn't, you didn't have, Roman Reigns wins at WrestleMania. He's allegedly a heel, as far as I can tell. But time's got to change. I don't believe my beliefs in WrestleMania are two philosophies. One is everybody doesn't deserve to be on the card. And you don't have to have a babyface finish to send everybody home happy. They're fucking happy. They paid a fortune for tickets. They made a great commitment to be there. I'd say they're happy. They're happy they made their buying decision, and the finish in the last match isn't going to adversely affect that. It might have years ago, Conrad. It might have had more of an effect years ago, but now everybody's, it's a different mindset. It's a different mindset thanks to social media and things of that nature. So, I don't believe that's necessary to have everybody send them home happy. Oh, you mean all the shit we've been doing for 2 days or for 3 hours or whatever, and they're not happy? Really? So I think it's an antiquated philosophy that was worked well in the 80s when Hogan was the guy. Austin was the guy. After that, Bret Hart was the guy. So I get that. But the times have changed, and we've moved into another era of perception and presentation.
Let's talk a little bit about what's announced for Backlash. It's Cena defending the title against Triple H and Edge. it makes sense to put Edge back in the picture given the success he had early in the year. But the build to the three-way is odd. In consecutive weeks, there's handicap matches with Cena, Edge, and Triple H teaming up, and they're taking on the Spirit Squad. I don't understand this whole. I get it, that's an old booking 101 thing where, hey, these guys make strange bedfellows. They hate each other and they've got a personal issue, but let's see if they can team together. But now they're taking on a pack of cheerleaders.
Looking back on this situation, Conrad, I would suggest to you and our fine audience here that more than likely the booking of the Spirit Squad to take on Cena, Edge, and Triple H was Patterson's idea.
Right.
Pat always had the big picture vision to see if we put a group of guys together, even though they were male cheerleaders, which isn't the most macho thing in public perception. And don't at me, folks. I'm not against male cheerleaders, for God's sakes. It's just in that era, and maybe today's era, they just weren't perceived as,
badasses.
They weren't lumberjacks.
Yeah.
So they weren't mortgage lenders.
Oh my gosh, listen to you.
So, well, they weren't. But nonetheless, the secret was they were some athletic kids who were new, they were fresh, and maybe one or two were lucky would spin out and become bigger stars. But it was an odd booking, no doubt about that. But it also spoke to this. It spoke to the fact that we were having trouble, apparently, in making heels. And
right.
One of the reasons for that is 50-50 booking and rushing things. So that company's had an issue for years about having no patience. And that starts at one place, no patience. So in any event, I can understand the apprehension of some people to accept that booking. I know why it was booked that way. And knowing Pat Patterson's track record, nobody really, obviously, it aired. It was booked.
Right.
So I think Pat got to pass on that one because he has been right so many times. And I'm not saying this was wrong. It's just, here's the issue. The kids on the Spirit Squad, they were not ready for that spot. They needed more time to get over. They needed a winning streak. They needed to get some credibility. They needed to show their strengths, and that's the athleticism, their charisma. But they were not given the time to let that evolve and develop. So that's why the booking seemed somewhat tepid. But I understand the logic. And again, it had Patterson's writings all over it.
Let's talk about Backlash. Cena would defeat Triple H and Edge by pinning Hunter after reversing the pedigree into a rollover. Triple H ends the show, though, laying out everyone with a sledgehammer and giving crotch chops. It's surprising enough that Triple H loses 2 pay-per-view main events in a row, but maybe not surprising he lays everyone out. But then the crotch chops, we know this is going to eventually lead to a DX reunion of sorts. But he's the heel here. What do you remember about the discussions to bring back DX? Was it just organic, or were they forcing it here?
I thought it was a great idea. DX had a lot of collateral. They had earned, they had some value, and so I didn't see anything wrong with it whatsoever. They overachieved, quite frankly, for what I thought it might be. It's just very hard to go back to another. It's hard to go back.
Yeah.
And bring it forward again. It's kind of tough to do that. And that was my concern. Can we replicate and recreate the buzz of DX? And, but for those that say Triple H never did the honors very often, we didn't want to put anybody over. I don't know if anybody wants to put anybody over, Conrad, quite frankly.
Right.
Hey, I hope I can lose today, man. I'm loving a loss today. I need a lose. But 2 pay-per-views in a row, he was doing the honors. So I have a lot of respect for him for that, because now he's doing business the right way. he realized, I would think, that saying my opponent at WrestleMania can't wrestle, and then he beat your ass, what does that make you look like?
Right.
So in any event, that was I was a little shocked about how that worked out, but he's losing 2 in a row. Hey, look, did it hurt his career?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. So and it's what speaks to it again, that if you do your honor, do the favors the right way,
Right.
you can survive just as easily as not. And I'm not saying a loss is as good as a win. I'm not saying that at all. But how you execute your loss is the key. It's not that you lost. It's how did you lose? How did you look when the final bell sounded?
It's that old, what's the old saying? It's not who goes over, it's who gets over.
Absolutely.
Hey, let me ask you, when we look back at this show, this is a show where Joey Styles is no longer calling the show.
Yeah.
He's going to start working on the relaunch of ECW, and now you're back in the chair.
Yep.
What do you remember about how that came to be?
Well, he was. So here's how I looked at that deal. This is going to sound very egocentric, and maybe I should have always been a heel. But I thought that was my chair.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate him keeping it warm for me. And that sounds really like a dick. But I was sick. Career was in jeopardy. I wasn't handling it well. Thank God for Jan. Keep me propped up and positive as she could, because I could be a miserable bastard.
You? No.
Yeah. I could. I am today sometimes. I can't help it. I'm a red ass sometimes, Conrad.
It's good for business. I saw.
I know it is. I know it's very good for business.
Yes, it is.
But Joey did a great job. But he came in with that ECW feel, and to me, that's not wrong. Nothing wrong with that at all. I think over the years, the legend of ECW continues to grow, and many of their former athletes' imagination. You know, they went broke. If you're a great star and you draw a lot of money, then you wouldn't go broke. And Joey just was not Vince's cup of tea. And I don't know why. I thought Joey Styles did a hell of a job. Sitting in, taking my spot while I was sick and on the IR, as it were. He did an excellent work. And I consider him a good friend, which may taint my evaluation of him. I thought Joey Styles is one of the better announcers that I've encountered in my career. But he didn't have that same feel in the front office. And that's unfortunate. But I was excited to get back to work, man. You kidding me? My wife was excited for me to get back to work and get the hell out of the house. You know, I was still doing the payroll, still doing the payoffs. I was still booking house shows. I was still busy, by the way. But my passion and my love, other than fried food, was me and calling matches at ringside. So I was happy to go back to work. I really was. Felt very blessed and refreshed, and I was ready to roll.
Well, Cena and Michaels are ready to roll in main event Raw. It's your first Raw back, and it's a 5-on-2 handicap match against the entire Spirit Squad. In hindsight, I don't think any of these matches actually helped the Spirit Squad, even when they won, but that's a story for another day. It's announced by Rob Van Dam that he's going to cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase at ECW's One Night Stand to help relaunch the ECW brand, and then challenge John Cena to face him at the Hammerstein Ballroom. This is an interesting deal here. We know we're about to kick off ECW again. We're bringing back One Night Stand after the incredible success from 05. So we're going to do it again in 06. And Rob Van Dam doesn't go the edge route where he's going to sneak up and make it a surprise. He calls his shot, so to speak. Cena, Rob Van Dam at One Night Stand. What did you think of the way this was revealed and announced so far in advance?
I liked it. Because wrestling fans love anticipation.
Yeah.
We love to anticipate matches and events and so forth. So I liked it. I thought it was, it's what Rob Van Dam would do. He's very ballsy. He was very self-confident, and he was going to be on his home court. that was one of the better atmospheres of any event that I saw. And I watched that on television. I wasn't there that night. So, it was a tight fitting deal. We tried to keep the staff down a little bit. And I was just, getting back in the hunt. So I stayed home and watched it on pay-per-view. But I thought it was one of the more amazing atmospheres that I had seen in a WWE produced event ever. So I thought the experiment worked, and John Cena showed that he was the soldier that we thought he was. He had no issues going into hostile brother. It was hostile.
Yes, it was.
I think, was that where they said that Cena wins, we riot?
Yes, that is exactly it.
So,
let's talk about the build to get there. Johnny Nitro returns to Raw and loses to Cena in his first match back. I want to take a sidebar here. It feels like the returning person to whatever brand and losing immediately has almost become a staple of modern WWE creative. Is that a directive? We've heard stories back in the day where Vince allegedly would, let's beat the new guy and see how he responds. We want to see, sort of test his mettle. Is that a Vince idea all the way through and through?
Pretty much. Don't know why. It's a carryover to the old school.
Yeah.
And, that's like doing dark matches of talents. They generally can't, anybody can come in and win, but how they work their match to put themselves in a position to get a quality loss.
Right.
And, so you kind of want to find out that information, that intel. But yeah, it's an old school thing. And I think that, that may have come from like a guy like Chief Jay Strongbow, because he was very influential to Vince in Vince's professional life over the years. So, but, and Strongbow's kind of a tough nut, in that regard. Let's beat him so he knows what it's like to lose here, and the fact that he's going to be asked to lose here from time to time, or maybe all the time. Depends on the talent. So, yeah, that was a Vinceism, no doubt.
Next up, we see Cena and Rob Van Dam have a contract signing, and wouldn't you know it, it turns into a brawl. Sabu botches an Arabian facebuster off the top rope onto Cena through a table. It's not probably the best first impression for a guy like Sabu. Do you know if Cena, who had really primarily been working a WWE style his entire career, did he have reservations about working with an outside of the box performer like Sabu?
Nope, he looked forward to it. It was a challenge. It was a different dance partner, different music, and he's going to prove that he can dance to any music you want to play. So he had no issues with it, I recall. He never expressed it to me, and we talked a lot. Every time we were together, we had a chat about something, generally football or something like that, but it wasn't always about finishes and things of that nature. But yeah, he looked forward to it, Conrad. New challenge, new team, new game. Let's go.
WWE versus ECW was live on the USA Network. We had you and King doing commentary for the WWE, Styles and Taz for ECW. What do you remember about working a 4-man booth? That's got to be stressful no matter who your other partners are, right?
Yeah, it's crowded. It's very crowded. And it's, everybody's got to be very, as much as you can, be very unselfish. Everybody's worried about who's getting the most mic time. And, the ECW thing was kind of perceived even then as here's what we want to do, but until we do it, it's not a done deal. So there was a lot of, I'm thinking a lot of uncomfortableness with some of the ECW alums. But, I'm not the 3-man booth is challenging enough. You had a 4th person there, and it gets really dicey because it's hard to maintain your continuity, your storytelling. If you and I and Bull Ramus are doing a show, we have to listen to each other and keep our stories connecting the dots. If you have an agenda, Conrad, where you think you got to get something in really important, then it's got to fit within the context of what we're presenting, what we're seeing on the screen, not to get your line in, or I haven't said anything in a few seconds, so I need to get something in here. But it was crowded. It was crowded, but I don't remember it being a bad experience. Taz and Joey Styles had worked together. They've been together a lot in ECW, not as broadcasters, I don't think, but certainly knowing each other very well. And they're both very strong ECW loyalists, and that was good, quite frankly. So I don't remember me having too many arguments with Joey or Taz whatsoever. Now, Lawler being the somewhat antagonist of our team,
right?
He had some fun with it, but that's how it should have been. And Taz, in conversely, had some fun with Lawler. But this 4-man booth is challenging. You got to really listen to each other and keep the dots connected. It's still going to be about storytelling and ultimately and foremost about getting talent over or a match over or the event over. So it was interesting. But it was much like Cena's experience. Let's try it. It's different. So we did that. We tried it. It was different and certainly was worth the try to make it happen. It was a nice little tension thing. And I thought that was good. And ECW needed to be attitudinal. They needed to be a little abrasive because that was their image and their entire brand for their entire run.
Cena and Sabu would end in a DQ when Big Show interferes to attack Cena to solidify that Show is ECW. And then at One Night Stand, we already sort of teased it a moment ago. Rob Van Dam, easy for me to say, picks up the win in 20 minutes and 39 seconds. But Paul Heyman is actually the guy who counts the pin once WWE referee Nick Patrick was knocked out. The atmosphere that night was off the charts, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
WWE though is really on a slippery slope of sorts here because they're allowing their brand and their top stars to be perceived on television as uncool. I mean, ECW fans here were chanting same old shit. Fuck you, Cena. You can't wrestle. And I mean, it was quite the atmosphere. He takes his shirt off, throws it to the crowd. They throw it back. It made for great TV.
Yeah.
But I do wonder, was it a risk in making our guy who we just heard the main event at Triple H, at WrestleMania say, oh, you're a transitional champion. You can't wrestle. Man, just a handful of months later, fans are giving it right back to him that same way.
Yeah, it was challenging, but John weathered the storm.
Yeah.
And he showed great character. He showed great integrity as far as the profession was concerned. He went out and, as any true pro would do, he ran the plays that were called, and he did it very well. So I have a lot of respect for John. He was way out of his comfort zone, if you will, but that's a good thing. Wrestlers that hover and establish residency in their own respective comfort zones is really the kiss of death. You got to continue to change your game. You got to continue to evolve. You can't be like Nolan Ryan and throw mostly fastballs. You got to throw an off-speed pitch every now and then. You got to change the zone. You got to work the outside part of the plate or whatever baseball analogy you want to utilize. But Cena I think Cena gained a lot of respect from the locker room because I'm sure a lot of the guys would say, I'm not putting that shit over.
Right.
Well, they would say that until they were booked. And then they'll go out and do it.
Let's talk a little bit about the decision to go with Rob Van Dam here. It feels like a major moment when John Cena is able to defeat Triple H at WrestleMania. The prior year, you could argue he was the top guy. They went with Batista to close the show. But you have Edge cash in on him in January. He wins it back at Royal Rumble. He successfully defends against Triple H. But just a couple of months later, he's dropping it to Rob Van Dam. Was Rob that hot? Did you feel like ECW needed the shot in the arm? Or was the old man second guessing himself on Cena here?
I think it was Van Dam was striking while the iron is hot.
Yeah.
Situation. I don't think it had anything to do with John other than John could make Rob Van Dam's victory mean more. So I don't think to me, that's what it was. I mean, let's not forget either, the newly minted Hall of Famer, Rob Van Dam, was an amazing talent. He had his own short list of things he did that were exclusive to him. He was ahead of the curve on the flying stuff. by and large. He was one of the first guys to really refine the use of his kicks and his feet. I think I said more often than not, he had educated feet.
Yep.
The one foot is a salutatorian, the other is a valedictorian. Students of the game, some other hideous thing I probably came up with. But he was good. He was Rob really, really good. And, his reputation and his affinity for the 420 was probably his only negative, because he was flexible. He was durable. He laid his stuff in. So I was always a big Rob Van Dam fan. Still am.
Let's talk about what's next for Cena here. He's on the debut episode of ECW on Sci-Fi. They're trying to give that show every chance they can to succeed. Sabu's going to win a battle royal to earn a shot to face Cena at Vengeance. And there had to be some sort of faith somewhere in these guys working together, because they're going to have a third match. We would also see John Cena defeat Balls Mahoney on Raw. That's a sentence I don't think any of us ever thought we'd say. And then we see Cena beat Sabu at the pay-per-view in an Extreme Lumberjack match. It feels like WWE once upon a time had planned to have a pretty big push here for Sabu, but I don't know that it ever quite grew legs, mainly because of what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
After an ECW show, July 2nd, Huntington, West Virginia, unfortunately, Rob Van Dam and Sabu were pulled over by the Ohio State Highway Patrol for speeding, and they're found to be in possession of various controlled substances. And this happens at a time when Rob Van Dam is the guy. And I don't know that you were full-time in talent relations at the time, but I'm sure that this was on your radar. What do you remember about this?
Well, it was a stupid mistake and carelessness and selfish, quite frankly. Those guys both getting renewed opportunities to ascend up a card and Conrad to make more money. And they adversely affected the whole process by speeding. And I'm not sure anything. I assume the car smelled like pot.
Right.
My guess. Because how else would the Ohio State Police think to search the car for drugs?
Right.
But it was just untimely. I mean, a lot of guys have gone to bat for those two fellas, and they got their break, so to speak, in that regard. But it just was just a terrible, terrible timing. It's never a good timing for that, for God's sakes. So it was unfortunate, and it was half-ass embarrassing, and it was something the company couldn't turn their back on. The company couldn't say, "Oh, it's all right. Hey, boys will be boys, You know how they are. You got somebody wrestler told me one time, well, you gotta, JR, we're like wild horses. You gotta let us run. I don't mind you running, but running off a cliff is stupid. And these are stupid acts of selfishness and not selflessness. It's just unfortunate. It's just unnecessary. Are you shitting me? If you're going to smoke weed and you're going to drive, first of all, it's not very smart. It's not very safe. Certainly that's a DUI waiting to happen. And it's just, you got to change. And a lot of the guys did change, but some of them were so defiant, they weren't going to change their personal habits come hell or high water. And that was an illustration of that right here.
Let's talk about the next big deal, of course, is going to be the Rob Van Dam suspension. It starts July 4th because you need to get the titles off him. So in Philadelphia, which is, I guess, a fitting place for this match, the scheduled three-way tag team match with Cena, Rob Van Dam, and Edge all having mystery partners turns into a regular three-way for the WWE title. And we've got to get the belt off Rob Van Dam. So there it is. Edge regains the WWE title in a three-way. Why Edge here instead of John? It's better to have a babyface chasing. Is that the thinking?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And quite frankly, Cena was so over at that point in time, the old Roddy Piper theory or Jake Roberts theory, he doesn't need a title to be over. He's over. So he doesn't need the hardware. But, nobody had any issues with it. I mean, John was the made man. And Edge was deserving. I mean, and he had proven himself as well. Edge had become a major star. So one or the other, it's almost like when you ask me that question, it's almost like, and I don't know this to be true, you'll tell me, that you may believe that Cena should have got it instead of Edge because Cena was a bigger star than Edge.
Well, I do think Cena was a bigger star than Edge here, but I've always heard guys like Bruce say, well, the WWE is a babyface territory. And that feels like that changed a little bit in time. I mean, these days Roman Reigns is certainly not a babyface, but Hulk Hogan was your babyface that ran the place. And then it was Bret Hart, and then it was Stone Cold. And it feels like John Cena's the next guy here. I mean, even going back to Bruno, who was the champ for what felt like years and years and years and years and years, he was always a babyface. So I don't know. It feels like a bit of a departure. It was getting hot, and I like the idea of having the babyface chase. It just didn't feel like that was always par for course in WWE.
It wasn't. You're right, but times have got to change, and I think maybe Vince started saying that maybe we're becoming too predictable.
There you go.
And so let's change it up. Let's go back to that baseball analogy. Hey, Nolan Ryan, throw me a breaking ball every now and then, because they're going to sit back and wait in the back of the batter's box and tee off on your fastballs. So I think maybe it's just the fact that we were getting a little bit too predictable, and Vince felt that, saw that, and changed that.
We should mention that we've got another match with Cena and Edge at Saturday night's main event, and it ends in a DQ. What do you think of bringing back Saturday night's main event in 06? I mean, obviously it's a great opportunity, but it doesn't feel like it was nearly as successful as the first go. Was this trying to capture lightning in a bottle, trying to hang on to nostalgia? What was it about it that made it sort of square peg round hole?
Well, you're looking for a win. You're looking for a show that's going to pop a big rating. It's on national television. It's on free TV. NBC was NBC, still are. So, I just think I think we had high hopes, and hopefully we could regenerate the enthusiasm and the popularity of this brand, a Saturday night's main event. So, to me, that's what that was. Again, you're always looking for something to either create new or go back to that you can translate into today's market. But golly, saying, getting on national television again on the Saturday night main event slot, it kind of felt like something really special. At least that was our goal. And for me as a broadcaster, it was a big deal. Being on NBC was a big deal. And I'm glad we did it. We weren't able to replicate what the newness of the Saturday night's main event was back in the day, because it wasn't new anymore. It had been done. But I think the opportunity to see more eyeballs on your show was not a bad thing whatsoever.
Let's talk about Umaga for a moment here. Cena would put Umaga over on Raw. That's a pretty big deal. Umaga is going to get quite the opportunity to have a spotlight on him here. How was Cena working with Umaga? I thought it worked.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah. And they liked each other and respected each other. And what a great pairing, Cena, the baby face, being put in jeopardy by this monster heel who was so big and massive and athletic, great facial expressions, laid his work in safely, but firmly, not stiffly, but firmly. It might've been a little stiff. I should ask John. But it was great. I thought they had great chemistry. I was a big Umaga fan. I'm a big fan of monster heels.
Yeah.
How many are there in the business right now? I don't know. There's got to be some, but at least they think in their own mind or back in catering that they're a monster heel. But they're just, it seems like making heels is, when you hear the smattering of applause, sometimes it shits all over the guy trying to get over as a villain, because that's really not what you want to do. You don't want people to have empathy for you or cheer you if you're a villain. You want them to pay their money to come so you get your ass whipped. Simple as that.
Somebody's getting their ass whipped at SummerSlam. It's in Boston, John Cena's hometown. Well, right by his hometown. Either way, the main event is Edge and Cena. And we just talked a little earlier about, hey, let's send the fans home happy. No interest in doing that here. Edge pins Cena in 15 minutes and 41 seconds after he hit Cena in the back of the head with a pair of brass knuckles. Man, these guys have really got some chemistry together. This was a good match. I dug it. But why don't you think he won? Is it because it was in his hometown? I know that sounds silly, but that feels like Vince 101. Or did you just think, hey, we got Edge hot, let's keep him hot?
I think the fact that we got Edge hot and he had some momentum and he was evolving into what we didn't have an abundance of, that was viable heels, main event level heels. And secondly, I think that most wrestling fans thought, well, Cena's going to win in Boston. You know, he's a Massachusetts guy, grew up in the shadow of Boston. This is a layup. This is Cena all the way. So I think Vince playing a off card was pretty smart booking, because it didn't kill Cena to lose, especially after being hit with brass knucks. He didn't get beat by a small package.
Right.
He got his shit scattered. And all of a sudden, you know, Edge leaves there with a title and heat. Because, you know, eventually the more heat Edge has, the more his loss to Cena, which will be coming up, would mean.
The next night, Lita tosses the spinner belt into the Bridgeport Harbor on Raw, and Edge debuts his own version of the world title. I know old school guys like me or you, we didn't exactly love the spinner belt, but there's no arguing you guys sold a shit ton of merch with that thing, did you not?
I think so. I think it was a high grossing item. Look, I may be, again, people calling for my ouster because of some of my quote unquote antiquated philosophies. I don't know, Conrad. I still have, you can't argue the success of the spinner belt. But even from the days of my good friend Steve Austin having his belt,
Smoking Skull, yeah,
Smoking Skull belt. I'm not against anybody making money, for goodness sakes. That's why they're here. But screwing around with the belt, the look of the championship, just for obvious marketing opportunities, I just never ranked real high on my list. And I don't say I hated it. And if it's making the company a lot of money, and of course, Cena was making great money on his merch, and you sell those high ticket items like the spinner belt was pretty cool, pretty lucrative. It just felt strange to me. It felt like we were leaving a piece of wrestling tradition and history behind. You know, you talked about Bruno a minute ago. You know, Bruno had the title for 9 years straight.
Yeah.
At one time. How many belt changes do you think there were in those 9 years? It became a standard.
Right.
It became, when you saw that, you recognized what it was and what it meant. And then it became, as we're talking about now, in this period of time, it became more of a marketing tool.
Yeah. So
I think you can still market them, but I don't think you have to change the whole damn look of the thing to make it more. To me, it kind of cheapens the title. That's all I'm going to say about that. I think it kind of cheapens the title. And again, I will also admit, I'm a little old school. I'm a little fundamental guy. I get that. But it just didn't work for me as much as it did for some others. Now, if I had been getting a royalty check,
that's different.
But, you know, based on a spinner belt, I can be had for the right money.
Yeah, I think one of your favorite quotes is, "I can't be bought, but I can be rented."
Correct.
The trailer for the Marine debuts on Raw. What do you think of the movie, Jim? And how does it rank in terms of other WWE movies? I think most agree it's probably the very best one.
I liked it. John was well cast, well prepared. He had a good heel to work with. I can't remember the guy's name, Robert something. He was the villain in this thing.
Oh, he was tremendous.
Yeah. So you had a good dancing partner, right?
Yes.
He had his adversary who had a backup.
Robert Patrick. That's who you were thinking of.
Robert Patrick was a really good actor. He's still I guess he's alive. Very good actor. You see him in different things, but he was a great villain to John Cena's hero. So I thought that movie did well. I remember Jan and I watching it and was very impressed with the whole damn production. I was impressed because I didn't know how well the WWE would do in making a movie and production wise and all those things. I should have known. I should have not doubted it. But after seeing it, I was very convinced that, Vince is probably on to something here. Good scripts with the right talent. Don't overload in their boat. They're not De Niro yet. Give them let them grow into a role. But Cena did a good job in this. Johnny was just, I don't know if that was his primary goal to come to WWE, but nonetheless, he delivered the water in that one. He did a good job.
Jeff Hardy would return to WWE after a 3-year absence and face Edge here. And then Cena throws Edge into the harbor after the match. We know that there are certain staples that Vince really, really likes. He kind of low key loves people being thrown into water, doesn't he?
Apparently it seems like he does. I just think Vince is like he's like huh?
He's a kid at heart. He likes
farting. Exactly. So I was going to say he's a juvenile delinquent at heart.
Yeah.
That's some clickbait for you out there for all you guys. Write that down. Vince McMahon is a juvenile delinquent at heart.
He did go to military school, so that's legit.
Yeah. He also got court-martialed.
That's a good story.
But seriously, I think he got court-martialed out of the military. He got in some trouble there. He was an honorary kid, and he was a kid, and had the balls to act out. And so, but yeah, I remember that. And boy, that little water there next to the arena in Bridgeport, the home of the Bridgeport Bluefish independent baseball team. I think they were managed by a former Yankee named Sparky Lyle, because I did a first pitch up there a couple of times, because I lived 20 minutes from there, 30 minutes in Norwalk, something like that. That water was gnarly.
I can't imagine I mean, you're just going to come out there with herpa, hepa, hiv. Like you need penicillin, you need something stat.
Oh, it was bad. And yeah, you got, but again, Edge, team player.
Yeah.
Never said a word. If he did, he kept it to himself or to his little inner circle of people that he was speaking with. But, Vince may I think it's just Vince likes to see people get put into uncomfortable, real positions.
Yeah, I get that. Next up, Chris Masters returns to face John Cena, and he loses by DQ because Edge interferes. And it's announced that Cena is going to face Edge in a TLC match at Unforgiven in Edge's hometown of Toronto. And if Cena loses, he has to go to SmackDown. So it's kind of a fun coincidence that you've got the two top stars feuding with their hometowns, hosting pay-per-views 2 months in a row. I know it wasn't planned out that way, but my goodness, the timing of that really helped.
Yeah, it was good booking. People paying attention, because Edge, Edge going to Toronto, he was going to have a huge emotional feel for that match because he was beloved there. He was an Ontario guy. We talked about that on television. His renowned his renowned independent career he had there. So people had a big investment in him there. And it just adds, we were talking earlier about AEW going back on the road sooner than later. It just makes the show better. The business will pick up essentially when we're back on national television in front of a live audience. And there's going to be an awful lot of live television. I know where my Wednesdays are going to be in various locations around the US of A. So, somebody's going to say, well, what about the UK? What about even Canada? I don't know. What about it? Would we like to go there? Of course we would. but COVID's still got to play. You still got to play by the rules. So I thought that was good booking, smart booking, quite frankly.
WWE returns to Madison Square Garden for the first time in 17 months for a Raw taping on September 11th. This is the 5-year anniversary of 9/11, and there's a lot going on at this show where your old pal Toby Keith is sitting front row ringside. John Cena is going to team with Jeff Hardy and Carlito to take on Edge, Johnny Nitro, and Randy Orton. And they actually get the win when Nitro submits to the STFU. Pretty big night for a show like this in New York on the anniversary of 9/11. Toby Keith, who had a hit song about all that, about America's going to put a boot in your ass and whatnot. This was a feel good night for wrestling, was it not?
Yeah, it was. Toby's still a good friend. We don't live, when I'm home in Oklahoma, he and I don't live that far apart, maybe 10 minutes. But my palatial estate pales in comparison to his. But I see him at OU games and things like that when our schedules permit, so forth. But he's a wrestling fan. You know, he did some stuff with TNA. You know, when Dusty was there, I guess your boy Jeff Jarrett was there. Maybe you could talk about that with him because they were there and they worked on it. But still, Toby talks about this very day. He calls it a textbook perfect suplex. That's what he delivered. Here's a guy that's got more money than Ben Gump, whoever that is. Still talks about a little show that he did, and he had fun. It's like the what's that kid's name? The Bunny.
Yeah, Bad Bunny. He did a great job at WrestleMania, don't you think?
Yep, he did. It showed a commitment to learning that craft, that skill set, to the degree to get by with a match. And here we go, the same shit though, man. The only way he gets credibility is to jump off things.
Right.
What is the fascination with jumping off shit onto another human that never beats him? Nothing. I don't get it, Conrad. Tell me. You're smart. You're smarter than I am.
Well, I was, you usually let me call the plays here on the show, but next week I was going to have you jump off of your condo onto a table.
Yeah.
We're going to put Excalibur on it. You could put him through it, and then we could yell, or maybe we should do it with Shivani, so Excalibur could still call.
Shivani's a softer landing,
for sure.
Even though I love him, yeah, I could call it maybe a Tope El Suicido or something.
Tope El Jim Rosso or something.
Yeah.
Hey, Unforgiven in Toronto sells out the Air Canada Center. And Cena gets his WWE title back by defeating Edge in 25 minutes and 28 seconds. He hits the FU off the top of a ladder through 2 tables stacked on top of each other. My God, what else can we do? I mean, you just sort of joked about what is the fascination with jumping off things, but anytime you put Edge in a ladder match, there is an expectation that it's going to be a big one.
Yeah.
From WrestleMania 17 and No Mercy and all the crazy stuff he did with the Hardys and the Dudleys, and of course his old pal Christian, people have a really high expectation. I think this is one of the better singles TLC matches of all time, and it almost feels a little bit like a forgotten one. I think people really lean on the tag matches, and perhaps that's true with anything. The original always gets the hype, but this was a fantastic match and an incredible performance by both guys.
I agree. Yeah, no doubt about it, because we were spoiled with the Hardys. By the way, condolences. Several days ago, Matt and Jeff Hardy lost their father, Gilbert, I think was his name. I met him several times. He was a rural mail carrier. So if you lived on Route 3 and so-and-so, Mr. Hardy probably put mail in your mailbox. Nice man. Nice man. So my condolences to the Hardy family and all their friends. Losing a dad's not easy. And, but people are so accustomed to seeing the Hardys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys teams in these TLC matches. It gave you more opportunities. There's more inventory there for crash and burns, and more people can jump off shit. So, but these two guys, they pulled it off big time. And it shows that they got along. It shows they had cooperation. It shows they were pros. But I'm with you, Conrad. This I don't think there was ever a better singles
Right.
TLC match that I can remember seeing in WWE or anywhere.
Let's mention that coming up next, even though Cena won, and the stipulation was if Cena loses, he has to go to SmackDown. Well, Cena won, but he's on the second episode of SmackDown that's now on My Network TV, and it's going to be Batista and Lashley to face Booker T, Fit Finlay, and William Regal. Anytime you need ratings in this era, it feels like we got Cena behind glass and we just break that glass in case of emergency. Hey, I know you won, but we're still going to put you on SmackDown anyway.
Yeah, he's box office in that regard. He made people watch, click, tune in, drag, cut, paste, register here, kiss my ass, computer shit. He was automatic.
Right.
So, and the other thing is My Network TV was new. You know, My Network TV was not something that had been around for decades and decades where people were used to the viewing habits. So consequently, it helped the relationship between WWE and their pretty new broadcast partner. You just, because it's great PR, because not only was Cena over with a lot of fans that weren't chanting Cena sucks, which I still think it was over them too, but they need to be noticed and all that. Raise your hand. But the executives perceive Cena as the guy. So for the guy to be put on your network was a good PR move, and would hopefully help with ratings. And apparently the success that WWE had on My Network TV has continued to evolve to where they've got great relationships with Universal, USA, and of course Fox. So all those are the right moves apparently. Because Cena was the go-to guy. You know, he's our best. And it was easy to convince the network you're getting our best guy because we're committed to our partnership.
We should mention they try something a little different on Raw in Oklahoma City, your old stomping grounds.
Yep.
Cena and Lita one-on-one in the main event. Cena wins in 47 seconds. It feels like, man, we're just trying to squeeze every bit of juice possible out of this Cena Edge thing. But man versus woman one-on-one, I don't know about that, man. What do you think?
Lukewarm. Wasn't crazy about it. Don't know who it helped. All it did was exactly what you said. It was a placeholder to continue telling the story of Cena and Edge. That's all. And look, seeing Lita in her little in her wrestling attire, and I always thought Lita had as much natural sex appeal as any female that we had, and still holds that spot pretty good right now in my view. So that was kind of nice for 47 seconds. Reminds me of some of my honeymoons. 47 seconds.
We see Cena team with Batista and Lashley to take on Booker, Finlay, and Regal on SmackDown. Lashley gets the pin over Booker. And then we get to a steel cage match once again on Raw. This time it's October 2nd. And who do you know? It's Edge and Cena. They go 19 minutes and 11 seconds. And Cena gets the win with the FU. It was a really long feud, but it was a good feud that provided a lot of major moments. But it did feel like fans were tiring of it at the end. Do you think that the old long-term storytelling, because it feels like, you know, what we grew up on 30 years ago, man, they would go a year with a feud. And now it feels like maybe we all have a shorter attention span because of social media or just the pace of life in modern society. It felt like fans were burnt out on this 10 months in here.
I believe that there are still place for long-term programs. I still think you can have a story that could go a year, but it has to be booked right, has to be timely. You have to add different ingredients to your stew. And you know, it's just got to be handled properly. It's not easy. It's not as easy as it was back in the day, back in my day, we didn't even have catering. Okay,
Right.
Tony Gurria there. But yeah, it can be done, but it's got to be done carefully, and you got to change things up. You can start here. Where I am, there I am. You start here, and then you're gonna have to blow off over here. And so to do that, you need to change the story up a little bit with some new players and some new ingredients, as I mentioned, regarding the soup. But it's not easy. It's not easy, but it can be done if done properly. But it's much more challenging today because of what you said. Well, I've already seen that match. And when somebody says, I've already seen that match, sometimes, Conrad, it means to me that you're very much a novice.
Yeah.
And you really don't get it. That the best stories are ones that have a nice arc, a long arc, and so that could be a year or whatever. You know, look at how long Austin and McMahon had their rivalry.
Oh yeah.
They changed ingredients. They had Rock in it, and they had somebody else, Triple H in it, and they kept adding things. But it still was a long story arc because it was done properly, and the talents involved in the casting of such, or the booking, if you will, it worked. So I'm with you on that deal.
Let's talk about the Raw family reunion. It's really done to kick off a quote unquote new season for Raw, and we have John Cena taking on the Undertaker. It's a big match for a big show, special attraction match, if you will. Why don't you think we ever got them in a bigger program? It feels like Undertaker and Cena, they could have had one hell of a long-term program, but it just never really happened.
I think part of it might be to protect the Undertaker and his babyface status.
Okay.
And he would have been the babyface, but it would have further put another shovel full of dirt on John Cena's babyface run.
Yeah.
So I just don't think it just didn't seem the right thing to do at that point in time. And, you know, people kept waiting for Cena's going to turn heel. Cena's going to, he'll have to turn heel here. I know he will. Everybody's doing their booking. So I thought that, I think that it was to protect Taker a little bit and to protect John. So, but you're right. It would have been a very interesting attraction. And I thought it would have been very well received. But you got to protect both guys because of who they are, what they represent, etc.
Next up, we've got K-Fed, Kevin Federline, debuting on Raw from the Staples Center as a friend of Johnny Nitro and Melina. And then Cyber Sunday, we have 3 brand champions. We've got ECW's Big Show, Raw's John Cena, and SmackDown's Booker T, all facing off. I mean, I understand the company was trying to make a big push for a brand split and create different unique identities. And perhaps, you know, we can get some fandom behind those individual brands and maybe try to recreate or replicate the success of the Monday Night War. But this just feels underwhelming for what it should be, in my opinion. What say you?
Do you think that all 3 of those guys were on a roll when they wrestled? I don't.
No.
So you come in with a flat build. That's what you got. I also think that part of this booking was to feature Booker T as a great African-American champion. And that was nothing that was that any territory or promotion had ever overused, because, you know, African-Americans are only going to go so high on the card, you know, and there's only going to be so many of them on the card. Thank God that's changed. So I think that's been one of the great improvements in our business is the racial equality and giving everybody, no matter their skin color, the opportunity to be a star. If you got it in you, the last thing you want is to have your skin color affect that on anything in life, quite frankly. So I think this booking, Conrad, had several agendas, and I think they're all pretty damn good. Booker T, for what that was, good stuff. Cena was the incumbent, and then Big Show was an attraction who could beat anybody because of nothing else but his sheer size and his right hand punch. So I think the match had checked a lot of different boxes. But if none of them, the three guys were hot,
right,
and had the momentum going in, it was going to come off as less than it's supposed to be.
let's talk about the match itself. Cyber Sunday. I guess before we do, we should do this backstage promo discussion. Booker T asked Cena if they can work together. And Cena says, if I get one night with Sharmell. Booker sends Sharmell outside, and Booker agrees. And then Cena says he's not interested. So he walks out and tells Sharmell the deal is on for Finley's midget, Sharmell, Jim Duggan's 2x4, and several other things. Jim, the fuck is this? Who booked this shit?
I don't know, man. It's so illogical. I'm almost embarrassed to talk about it. You know, now you can make a reason for it. You know, Bruce, my good friend Bruce Pritchard, would try to he might try to justify it with some WWE logic or philosophy, but he's not going to be sold on it either.
Right.
It was distasteful. It was disrespectful. And I thought Cena was the babyface. Is he not?
Yep.
Is that what babyfaces do? I want to have sex with your wife. Did you get a stand-in that's vertically challenged? And I still don't get the goddamn 2x4. So I don't know. I don't know if anybody liked that. But there again, it's full speed ahead because apparently, you know Vince loved this idea.
Oh yeah.
And nobody's going to say anything. They're not going to say shit with a mouthful.
That's an old school saying.
Yep. So that's kind of how that worked. I didn't like it.
Well, let's talk about the match itself. Booker actually pinned Cena to retain his world heavyweight title after K-Fed interferes. What do you remember about Federline? How was he to deal with?
I wasn't around him very much, but he seemed to be personable. Duck out of water, fish out of water, whatever out of water. My most vivid memory of K-Fed was one of my most heartbreaking nights of my life, because we were doing January 1st in Miami, Cena and K-Fed. I hadn't asked for a day off in forever. Maybe, I don't think ever, quite frankly. The only time I was off was when I was sick. And I didn't want to be off then. But I wanted to be off on this night because Oklahoma played Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. And we got beat. Heartbreaking. Should have won. But, Vince said to me, because I asked, "Well, boss, I'd like to have this Monday off," or whatever. "Oh, no, I can't do that, JR. "Why?" "Oh, I need you for this match. I got to have you call K. You're the only guy that can call K-Fed and John. We got to protect John, You sure? There's nobody else in the world?" I should have asked for a new contract or something. I didn't know I was that valuable. So pay me more. So that was what I remember about it. He seemed like a decent guy. Fish out of water. Didn't know. Wasn't overly athletic, but he wasn't horrible. He wasn't Blue Bunny or what's his name, Bad Bunny. Blue Bunny's an ice cream, I think. But he wasn't on the level of Bad Bunny, because I don't think he worked that hard to get ready.
Right.
So Cena pulled that thing through and got that deal done. That's what I mostly remember about that experience with K-Fed. I had rather have been in Phoenix watching the football game and my team get, their hobnail boot stuck in their heart, as opposed to trying to make sense out of K-Fed and John Cena. But as it was reported, I was there. I did my job, and I hurried back to the hotel. Lawler gave me a ride back to the hotel because he's going to his condo in Fort Myers. I ran to my room. Well, I took an elevator. Me running up 20 flights of stairs, probably not a cool thing. I would have got there by the end of the game anyway. So I got to watch the fourth quarter, and I ravaged the liquor bar. I was drinking shit that I've never even tried to drink before. I was trying to numb myself after seeing what was happening. And so that was the story of that deal. And for some reason, I remember, I don't know where we went the next day, but I remember being on a flight with China. I think it was her. I think that's when that was. Things start running together, but nonetheless, I'd rather been somewhere else. But hey, look, I didn't know K-Fed was that big a star. Did you know he was that big a star?
Well, yeah, he was a pop culture thing. Just FYI, you were thinking of a different night where you raided the mini bar and hung out with China the next day, because she was gone in like 01. So,
oh yeah, it was then. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Either way, though, let's talk about how that whole Federline thing happened. Cena would save Maria from an attack by Umaga and then accept Federline's challenge for a match at New Year's Day's Raw starting in 2007.
Yeah.
I want to mention around this time, the Marine is going to come out. So because of that movie coming out, Cena's got to do press, and he does it everywhere. Like Late Night with Conan O'Brien, Live with Regis and Kelly, Mad TV, The Howard Stern Show, the best damn sports show, period. There's not been many better ambassadors for the company than John Cena. Can we
Never.
Yeah.
Never. And he never turned nothing down but the covers. He was booked. He was going to go. He was always going to try to promote the company and its various projects. And so nobody worked harder that I was ever around in WWE than John Cena. His work ethic was Herculean, at least. So he was always that guy. Well, and because it was his first movie, he was all gung ho about promoting it, as he should be. And the fact that it wasn't a stinker. He did a nice job in that, as we've already discussed. So, but nobody that I can recall in WWE, the annals of WWE, I was there 26 years, starting in 1993. Nobody worked harder, or really is in the same conversation, than John Cena as it relates to doing extra work and always being there. He may go do media all day. Then when he got to the arena, guess what? He's got a Make-A-Wish to do. That's just him.
Survivor Series 2006, back in Philadelphia, Cena's going to team with Kane, Bobby Lashley, Rob Van Dam, and Sabu. They're going to take on Big Show, Umaga, Finlay, MVP, and Test. Umaga's DQ just 50 seconds in for attacking Cena and Rob Van Dam with a monitor. And Cena is involved in only the finish, where he hits the FU on Big Show to get the win for his team and be the final survivor. What do you think of these elimination style Survivor Series matches? Did you like it? Or too old school?
If the participants in said match had issues that were more than one pairing deep, I liked them. If there was a story behind the teams and how the teams get together and they weren't overtly random, I liked it. What I remember about that is the fact that Cena's image, the image of Cena FUing Big Show, was incredible. Absolutely incredible. It put Cena's strength over, and he was ox strong. And so I remember that aspect of it. So I remember the finish. So apparently it's pretty good booking. I still remember that finish because his legs were shaking, and Big Show probably was well north of 400 pounds at that time.
Right.
So it's pretty damn impressive, to say the very least. But I like the teams if the teams have some sort of synergy. If they're just names put together, it's just a big old tag match.
Well, the next night on Raw, Umaga's going to lay Cena out. So at this point, Cena's in a program with Umaga and Kevin Federline, who I guess has Johnny Nitro with him. It's announced that SmackDown's Armageddon pay-per-view, Cena will team with Batista to face Booker and Finlay. Is this one of those, ratings are down, let's put Cena behind glass, let's break that glass, we need John Cena again?
Yeah, he's reliable. He's your go-to. Simple as that. Give him the ball.
Yeah.
You get in the red zone, who's going to carry the ball? Najee Harris or some red shirt? It's going to be John Cena, or in this analogy or illustration, Najee Harris. who I like, by the way. I think he's going to be a great pro. I really do.
Now, it's announced that Cena is going to be defending his WWE title in a Master Lock challenge against Chris Masters, and then Cena put him in the Master Lock. So at this point, Cena is like the central point of most of what's happening on Raw. You know, we've mentioned he's got something going on with K-Fed. He's got something going on with Umaga. He's right in the middle of things on SmackDown with Batista. And now he's got this Master Lock. It feels like at this point, Cena is almost the sun, and the rest of the roster is sort of revolving around him in terms of the booking. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. No different than Austin. No different than Hogan. No different than Bruno. He was the it guy, was John Cena. And because one reason, he was reliable and he delivered consistently.
Tributes to the Troops is taped, and Cena defeats Edge in Iraq. JR, you went on some of these trips, didn't you? What did John think about performing for the Troops?
I never went on one trip, Conrad.
Do you regret not going?
Yeah. I was always ready to go. I would have enjoyed the experience and interacting with our fighting men and women that were representing our country and keeping us safe and doing their work in less than ideal circumstances. Because a lot of those guys, I'm a firm believer that didn't know why the hell they were in Iraq in the first place. So that's just my personal opinion. But I'd love to have gone on those trips. You know, I think the tribute to the troops thing was a JBL idea. It's a great PR vehicle, to say the least. And congratulations, JBL's in the Hall of Fame now. The only thing about that, I didn't understand why JBL didn't wear his hat. He carried it with him. I don't understand that. I think he would have been perfectly in character for him to wear his hat. And not necessarily because I'm a hat snob, but he was known for, you know, that hat was a big deal, part of his presentation, his persona. But you know, I didn't get to go on those trips. I would have loved to. Ironically, Joey Styles did. He went on one of them, and we talked about that. It was an interesting experience, to say the least. It's very uncustomary what they're doing and how they're traveling and security risk and all these things. So, I think if the Iraqi people, the army, the bad guys, realized how much publicity they would have received if they had done something heinous to these WWE guys. Thank God they didn't. That would have been more of a risk. But I wish I could have made some of those trips. I would have loved it. It would have been a lot of fun, and just interacting with the troops would have been a cool opportunity. It would have been an honor, quite frankly.
Cena appears on a SmackDown episode to build up his Armageddon main event in Boston, which I guess is his quote unquote hometown. There's an interesting little bit here where Cena hugs his dad and then gives Michael Cole everything he asked for on Christmas: a hard salami, a topless photo of David Hasselhoff, and a bag of salty nuts. Cena really fit in with that sort of tongue-in-cheek type humor. I dug it. What did you think?
I liked it too. Better good old Michael Cole than me, but it still would have been funny. It might have even been funnier. Hell, I don't know. The topless photo of David Hasselhoff is somewhat homophobic, but nonetheless, and I guess the bag of salty nuts has some other sort of unique symbolism. But John had a great sense of humor. And you see that now in all the commercials. He's on commercials. It seems like every other commercial break, John's doing something. And he's got a show on TBS, which is kind of cool. Our sister network of TNT. So he was very good at this. It showed his versatility, Conrad. It showed his range. He just wasn't the angry, I've been wrong, or the odds are against me babyface. He had a sense of humor. If he had not had such a great sense of humor, all these boos and this disrespect that he was getting for seemingly no reason. I'm sure some fans are going to listen to this, and maybe they'll explain to you and I why they were booing John Cena back in that era, I would assume. So I don't know the reason. The only thing you can say is, well, we were just tired of him. You got to come come at me with something better than that. You know, we're just tired of it. Then why didn't he's the only guy on the roster that you were tired of? So anyhow, great sense of humor, and he used it when he was able to use it. He delivered again. He delivered.
In Armageddon, we see Cena and Batista defeat Booker and Finlay when Batista pins Booker. Had SmackDown just clearly become the number 2 show? Was Batista not carrying the load in Vince McMahon's eyes? Why the need to inject Cena so often into Batista's show?
Because it was less risk. Cena had traveled the roads as a top guy from day one. When he finally got on TV, he was always taken care of well. I think Dave Batista was still finding himself to some degree, and wasn't as good then as he would eventually be. So I think that's part of it. Cena was less risk, Conrad. Pretty simple.
A 3-hour Raw coming off of Armageddon is scheduled, and Edge wins a 30-man battle royal to gain a shot at John Cena's WWE title. And then Cena would pin Edge in 14 minutes and 7 seconds with a whole bunch of interference from Randy Orton, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Umaga. And it's announced that later on there will be a 6-man tag match to main event. So let's recap. Edge's battle royal goes 30 minutes. Then he works Cena for 14 minutes. And now in the main event, they're going to go 7 minutes before it turns into a schmoz. Boy, Edge earned his money that day, did he not?
He did, yeah. And never bitched or complained a bit.
That's the last John Cena we're going to see on TV before the end of the year. Overall, what did you think of John's 2006 and how he held himself as champion with Edge and Rob Van Dam and all the moving and shaking here throughout the year?
Very, very admirable. I don't know that we had anybody on the roster that could have pulled it off better than John Cena. Hard work. It wasn't easy. He was being asked, a lot was being asked of John in a variety of platforms, whether it be promotion, selling live event tickets, promoting a movie, his Make-A-Wish endeavors, and his schedule. You know, he didn't ask for time off. He was beautiful to work with in that regard. And I thought John's 2006 was exemplary, quite frankly, considering we talk about loading somebody's plate. You and I load our plates every day, especially around lunchtime.
That's right.
And there's nothing wrong with that, buddy boy. So, but I was very proud of John and not only the man that he was, but the professional and the performer that he evolved into being. Again, 2006 was, I think the company made some money, and they can look at the John Cena's work as one of the primary reasons for that.
Let's talk about the stats. Raw started the year off on January 2nd with a 3.7 rating. The highest it would get would be 4 weeks later, January 30th. It got a 4.5. We closed the year out with John Cena on Raw on December 18th. The episode from the 25th was just a recap show, and that gets a 3.5. We pretty much stay steady all year. There are some peaks and valleys, but we don't quite crack the number 4 after August 21st. But in terms of television ratings, it seems like in 2006, Cena carried the whole show on his back. Would you agree with that?
Don't worry about the mules, Conrad. Just load the wagon. And God knows that John Cena's wagon was loaded. I remember Vince and I having a few conversations about, you think we should, I mentioned and Vince mentioned to me, do you think we should take better care of him on his schedule? And absolutely. Or he's going to burn out, or he might get fatigued, get hurt, whatever the case may be. But John Cena never came to me one time and asked for time off. He was ready to work. It's game day. Let's go play. So, but to say that was he the reason for those ratings holding up? I'd give you an emphatic yes. Absolutely. Because look at all the talents he touched. Look at all the guys he worked with. He helped make Edge.
Yeah. Let's talk about how big of a draw he was. New Year's Revolution did 345,000 buys, and he's main eventing. The Royal Rumble has 585,000 buys, Cena in the main event. WrestleMania 22, 975. Cena in the main event. Backlash with Cena in the main event, 230. One Night Stand with Cena on top, 304. SummerSlam, 541 with Cena on top. Unforgiven, 307,000. Cyber Sunday, 228. And Armageddon, 239. Those are all main evented by John Cena. Now, the shows that were not main evented that year, 218 for No Way Out, 252 for Judgment Day, 429 for Vengeance, 232 for Great American Bash. No Mercy was 197. Survivor Series was 383. And of course, regrettably, December to Dismember was just 90,000. I don't think there's an argument here. John Cena is the biggest pay-per-view draw for the entire year. We broke down the ratings, but the buys tell the same story. It doesn't feel like his career's slowing down at all because, by the way, when he did all of this, he also had, to this day, probably the highest grossing WWE movie of all time in the Marine. One banner year for Mr. John Cena here in 06, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Hall of Fame year. If he quit, retired, took a sabbatical, whatever, left the business after 2006, he's obviously still a first team Hall of Famer. His contributions to the bottom line, as old friend Stone Cold would say, well documented. Bottom line, Conrad, here is that the numbers don't lie.
Right.
And everything you so accurately talked about and addressed, John Cena was the guy that kept the boat afloat in 2006. Now, he didn't dance. He didn't play a cappella. He had dancing partners that were very good, but he made them better. And even if he was getting all these boos, what that means in general wrestling psychology is that some people would have been happy to see him lose the title.
Right.
And to get on the short end of the stick. That's what he had. People made an emotional investment in John Cena, positively or negatively, in your or my eyes. But the bottom line is that he contributed mightily to the profitability of WWE in 2006. Hall of Fame year for a Hall of Fame guy.
And we'll be back next week for Backlash 2001. On top, it's the two-man power trip challenging the Brothers of Destruction for the tag titles. We've also got a triple threat for the European title with Matt Hardy, Christian, and Eddie Guerrero. A last man standing match with Big Show and Chris Benoit. An ultimate submission match with Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle. William Regal will be wrestling Chris Jericho in a Duchess of Queensberry rules match, which sounds kind of fun. Rhino and Raven are in there for the Hardcore Championship. We've got the X Factor taking on the Dudley Boys in a 6-man tag, and it's all coming your way next week. It went down at one of our favorite arenas, the Allstate Arena, right there at the former Rosemont Horizon, just outside of Chicago. It's hard to believe this was 20 years ago, Jim, but
I don't know.
Talking about it next week. But what we're going to talk about now, Grillin' JR and all the great barbecue products that you can get at jrsbbq.com. The name of our show is Grillin' JR. That's how much Jim loves grilling, and it's time to sauce it, baby. Tell them where to go.
All the sauce at jrsbbq.com. You know, I want to explain something regarding we've had a run on products, and unfortunately for us, we didn't forecast at jrsbbq.com the amount of business that we were going to have, and so we kind of fumbled inside the red zone on having enough inventory. We weren't able, because we never had that much success as we're having, that we're going to run out of product. Primarily the all-purpose seasoning, and then of course the mustard. We think we had those issues addressed. The issue of the all-purpose seasoning was that we did order it way in advance. We did a backup order. We got another backup order in. But, you know, this was a manufacturer's issue that was beyond our control. I'm not passing a buck. It still ends with me. It's got my name on it, and so I'll take responsibility. But they had trouble with their line technically, breaking down some parts or whatever. In any event, we're told that any day now, I'm not going to give you a date, but I think before the end of the month of April, we'll have everything back in stock, and hopefully folks will just be patient with us. We've got JR's Original, which is our top seller, and the hot barbecue sauce. We've got ketchup. We got beef jerky. It's all good. We got signed books, and all that could be found at jrsbbq.com. And the great thing about it, Conrad, as I've mentioned here, quasi tongue-in-cheek, but it's a shoot, brother, because I need my push. No. That we're still going to be competitive. Customer service is imperative for us. And I just wish we hadn't had these interruptions in service. Quite frankly, it's kind of like you talked about your DirecTV. DirecTV is a wonderful thing until it storms.
Right.
But you can't, what can Conrad do about the weather? Nada, nothing. You got to work through it. So that's what we're doing. We appreciate everybody's patience. And it costs nothing to look. So check it out. Go to the site, move around, see what we got, because we've still got a lot of great stuff in stock. So I appreciate that. And you know, I just signed, I think, about probably 100 books.
Wow.
Here in the last several hours. So we're still personalizing and signing Slobberknocker and Under the Black Hat. And of course, you know that we have Under the Black Hat is now out in paperback. It looks kind of like this.
There you go.
Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Beautiful. What a handsome man. No, wrong. So all good. So it's good. It's good. Every time we send out an order, I think my mom and my little Jan are looking down and kind of smiling mischievously because their ideas are working. We just got to do a better job with our inventory control. But sometimes things happen that are just completely out of your control. We didn't know our seasoning people were going to have trouble with their manufacturing line, but they're addressing it. It's human error. It's where it goes. So we'll be there. But we appreciate everybody's business. Quite frankly, I'm very grateful, and I'm grateful to us, you and me, that we get a chance to talk about it here occasionally. And it's a good thing. So all good, folks. It's grilling season. Conrad and I both are active grillers. I like to eat healthier, as does Conrad. And grilling is a healthy way of going about your groceries.
Well, it's also fun too. You know, I had some Italian sausage and some chicken breasts on the grill last night. It was coated up with JR's all-purpose seasoning. I loaded up before there was a run on the store, so to speak. It's can't miss, folks. You don't want to miss it. And you don't want to miss next week right here, Backlash 2001. So if you haven't already, do these two things right now. Go to jrsbbq.com and load up. It's grilling season, Daddy. And don't forget, you get all these shows that Jim and I do early and ad-free over at adfreeshows.com. Until next time, he is at JR's BBQ. I am at Hey, it's Conrad, and we are out of time. We'll see you next week right here on Grillin' JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross.
And don't forget, my voice can be heard every Wednesday night, 8 o'clock, 7 Central on good old TNT. Love your support, everybody. And Conrad, remember, a little extra heavy on the mister. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.